Hello, everyone. I am Charlie Tolhurst, and welcome to the Charlie Tolhurst Show for today, the 30th of April. Good evening, everybody. I just want to say I hope everyone's enjoyed their month of April. We have one more show to round out the month. I will be joined shortly by Labour Party supporter Zach Chambers to round up all the latest news from around the world and also many other great headlines as well. There are plenty of headlines that we have got to mention about this week. So, without further ado, I am going to open the show off tonight, guys, by talking quickly in my opening monologue tonight about what is happening in Ukraine. We're going to start off with the Ukraine situation before moving on a bit later to the political news. And this is what we're going to talk about in Ukraine. Now, Russia continues to bombard cities across the country. The other day, we saw horrifying scenes in the capital city of Kyiv, where a couple of missile strikes attacked the city centre. I would just like to say quickly that those are once again war crimes committed by the Russian President Vladimir Putin. And I have to say, at least a few people so far have been killed, according to a Ukrainian MP who was speaking just earlier on today on Alistair Stewart's show on GB News about some of the casualties that were involved in that missile strike in Kyiv just the other day. Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of basically trying to ruin the UN Secretary General's visit. Obviously, Antonio Guterres, who is the UN Secretary General, actually visited that city yesterday. He went to Kyiv for talks with Volodymyr Zelensky on how this war can be stopped. I have to say, guys, if you've been watching the news lately, you'd have seen horrifying images of Kyiv with a huge apartment block being set ablaze by Russian missile strikes. I just want to say this is absolutely dangerous from the Russians. I don't even know what they're trying to do. The whole war has been a disaster for them. They have lost so many soldiers that they didn't need to do this. And they are causing disruption in Ukraine. I cannot believe the sheer destruction that your country is going through right now. And to all the listeners out there who think that Vladimir Putin is some kind of leader, some people in Russia will think, oh, he's an invincible man. He can raise the rhetoric somewhat. Well, unfortunately, he is a dictator. He is a tyrant in his own right. He can leave these people in denial. He can ban the media he wants. But there is no question about that the Russian state television keep popping up with propaganda messages in all truth. The truth is that the war in Ukraine is showing some kind of problem to Vladimir Putin, who also warned the other day that he will strike back if any country targets Russian territory. President Putin the other day using pretty vulgar language to display his anger at Russia. Russian, obviously people who are targeting Russia, countries that are using Russia and basically eliminating them and trying to also supply Ukraine with arms. This is a horrible situation for what Vladimir Putin is doing. And I'm now joined by Labour Party supporter Zach Chambers, who finally managed to join us tonight. Now, Zach, in my opening monologue tonight, I mentioned all about Putin's war in Ukraine, calling the missile strike in Kyiv quite simply a distraction to the UN Secretary General visiting. What did you make of President Putin's troops bombarding that city?
Yeah, hi Charlie. Sorry, I was just slow finger, by the way. Is everything going a bit painfully wrong for me this evening? But yeah, obviously, Russia has been doing their little threatening thing of deciding to nations who dare to send weapons to Ukraine because it's obviously needed, Charlie, and threaten them with the idea of nukes. Now, I personally think, Charlie, if you think about it, that look, it's not going to happen. And I tell you what, Russia ain't going to use nukes because they're compulsive lies in some way, Charlie. They're compulsive lies in that part. So when they say they're going to threaten people with nukes or other countries with nukes, that ain't going to happen because we know what they say. When they mean yes, they mean no, really. And that's been their monologue all along, Charlie. They threatened it before a few years ago. It hadn't happened. They threatened it a few weeks ago. It still hasn't happened, Charlie. And they're threatening it now. It's just not very believable, in my words, Charlie. Unfortunately for Russia, in that part, it's not very. They're not believing themselves. And the point is, Charlie, is it's all good for Russia to say, well, stop supplying other Ukraine with weapons to these other countries, but that's not. No one's going to listen to that. No one's going to listen to them, Charlie. So what can they do about it? Nothing. At the end of the day, so yeah, that's where we are, Charlie.
I have to say, Zach, though, President Putin did address the Russian assembly the other day, still saying that he would threaten lightning fast reactions if the West did provide Ukraine with, say, weapons. We know that I think Germany and I think the Netherlands are sending some like helicopter attack, sort of like helicopter, sort of like maybe like attack helicopters, basically to like try and strengthen Ukraine's like air defenses, for example. That was what I got reported on the other day. The thing is, though, is that Britain has, I think, sent 8,000 troops over to NATO now, which is the biggest deployment since the Cold War, just in case, say, they are needed. But for me personally, I think, Zach, the threat of World War III, obviously Ben Wallace the other day saying that Putin could use his Victory Day parade on the 9th of May, which is the day that obviously Russia celebrate the end of the Second World War, to potentially, say, launch a mass murderers on his population or something.
I don't know, Charlie. I mean, that would be very interesting. It'll be a sad way to declare victory for something that should be about the Holocaust and, World War II and defeating the Nazis. Well, it's rather ironic. It's all about that, Charlie. And then it turns out to be they're the ones that really acting Nazis themselves, really, to be fair. I'm kind of echoing Piers Morgan on this one, where he uses one of his monologues on the New Talk TV show to call basically the Russian government Nazis. And they probably are, Charlie. It'll be a sad way of declaring victory if you're going to destroy populations of people for the sake of using your own weapons. And other countries as well, potentially. We know potentially they could use it in other countries as far as we're aware, Charlie. We never know. But I'm not sure. For all this talk about World War III, Charlie, and I think it's very unlikely as well that we're going to get into another world war. I think that what it is, it's going to be Russia and Ukraine continuing to have a nice little fight out with each other. But it's not going to be World War III. I can't see it happening, Charlie. For what I cannot
I hope really, not, trust me.
No, I don't want that to happen. No way do I want that to happen, Charlie. I just cannot see it happening because it's the country, it's the ones that are in fighting are two countries, Charlie. That's not necessitating a world war. That's not enough. The only reason where we necessitate world war is when pretty much many, if not all the countries start to go and fight with each other. You'd probably have North Korea, Syria, Russia, one side of the aisle. I mean, and Iran maybe as well. And,
Belarus.
But the thing is, Belarus as well. But the thing is, Charlie, is that I genuinely think about it. I think the G20, the likes of the G7 have more possibility of winning over 4 countries with nukes potentially. I genuinely think that because we've got total more weapons to use if we ever need to use them. We have a nuclear deterrent as well. So I think we could destroy the likes of Russia, Iran, and North Korea if we really wanted to, Charlie. I know it's right all these nuke talks, but I think we could actually destroy them. I think people don't realise. I know everyone's going to think, oh yeah, North Korea, Iran, they've got all the nukes and nuclear ballistic missiles and all that sort of thing that can just explode and cause damage and everything like that. Trust me, we've got a lot more. Many countries combined: France, Germany, Poland, Ukraine, every other country that's with our side, Charlie. We've got so much more that we can use to basically, just destroy Russians. Basically, I don't think people appreciate that. I genuinely don't.
Yes, what did you make of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' visit? Because he visited Moscow on Monday to talk with Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov, and he clearly sat at Putin's infamous 20-meter long table. I mean, goodness me, if you imagine sitting at a 20-foot long table, then it's like probably just as big as, say, 5 or 6 chessboards mounted on one thing. The thing is, though, is that he sat on Putin's infamously long table, like away from the Russian leader, and then he went with Sergei Lavrov, to do a press conference. But the thing is, Zach, is that Putin, though, in that meeting, continued to basically say that he was achieving noble aims of his invasion rather than striking a peace deal.
He really isn't. The thing is, Charlie, he really isn't achieving his aims. I'm afraid to say he's not achieved any of his aims in round 1 of the invasion, because none of the takeovers that he wanted has happened, Charlie. There. So none of the takeovers that he wanted, aka the takeover of the Ukrainian government, for example, that hasn't happened. Because he hasn't executed the Ukrainian leaders in that part. He hasn't taken over Kyiv there as well. Charlie. So I know. I think he hasn't achieved his aims. He really hasn't. He's missed out on a lot of them. He's been outmaneuvered by the Ukrainian army, Ukrainian people, there as well. So he's been totally outmaneuvered. And I know we're into the next phase, which I'm surprised they moved on to, quite frankly, if they can't even do phase 1, Charlie. If I was the Russian military, right, okay, maybe I would have swapped the phases round so that we focused on, if you're a Russian and I was telling them how to do this invasion, you'd probably focus on Eastern Donbass first of all, then go for the rest of the country. I think this whole invasion thing has been a total mistake. If you're asking me, Charlie, it really has been a total mistake. And it's not been a good one.
Well, Zach, whilst I'm here, I'm going to play for you a short little clip from BBC News after the UN Secretary General visited a destroyed Ukrainian town. Have a listen to this, guys. Please note, this video does contain some distressing images. Have a listen to this.
That have been badly damaged during Russia's invasion. He's visiting sites that have experienced Russian attacks and occupation ahead of a meeting with President Zelensky. It's thought they'll discuss how to evacuate hundreds of civilians from a besieged steelworks in the southern port city of Mariupol. So let's take a look at some of today's other developments. In a speech, the UK's Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said victory for Ukraine was a strategic imperative and Russian forces must be pushed out of the whole of Ukraine, in what amounts to the clearest statement yet of the UK's objectives in the war. Meanwhile, Russia's President Vladimir Putin warns any country interfering in Ukraine, it will be met with what he called lightning-fast military retaliation. So let's have a listen now to what the head of the UN, Antonio Guterres, had to say when he arrived on the outskirts of Kyiv earlier.
When I see those destroyed buildings, I must say what I feel. I imagine my family in one of those houses that is now destroyed and black. I see my granddaughters running away in panic, part of the family eventually killed. The war is an absurdity in the 21st century. The war is evil. And when we see these situations, our heart, of course, stays with the victims, our condolences to their families, but our emotions are, there is no way a war can be acceptable in the 21st century. Look at that. Thank you.
Antonio Guterres there in the Borodianka area north of the capital, Kyiv. So let's now take a look at all the latest developments on the situation in Ukraine with our current.
The aftermath of a missile attack in the city of Kharkiv in northern Ukraine. At least one person is reported to have been killed here. The invasion has reduced much of this city to rubble.
It's scary. It's so painful. When it's dark, we're in fear. When there is a shooting and when the evening comes, it's indescribable, unbearable.
In a speech, the UK Foreign Secretary Liz Truss called for Western countries to push Russian forces out of Ukraine.
Some argue that we shouldn't provide heavy weapons for fear of provoking something worse. But my view is that inaction would be the greatest provocation. This is a time for courage, not for caution.
Now President Putin has sent a message to the West, warning Ukraine's allies against further interference.
If anyone from the outside intends to interfere in what's happening, then they should know this. If they create threats for us, threats of a strategic nature, our retaliation, our counterstrike will be instantaneous.
In the southern port city of Mariupol, this steel plant surrounded by Russian forces, the last stronghold of Ukrainian fighters here. Their commander appealing for a mass evacuation, saying alongside 600 wounded soldiers are civilians, including children inside.
Today, my appeal is apply the extraction procedure to us. The wounded will die, and those who are alive will fall in the battle. Civilians will die together with us. Very, very many people have died in the city. The city has been wiped off the face of the earth.
Andrew Plant, BBC News.
Thank you there to obviously the BBC News for sharing that article. Obviously, the UN Secretary General, as I mentioned in my opening monologue, visited Ukraine just a few days after Russia to examine the damage. Zach, what did you make to that report on the UN Secretary General's visit and the comments he made about Vladimir Putin's special military operation in Ukraine?
Well, I certainly think in one way, Charlie, that he, the UN General Secretary, has been a lot more, should I say, tougher on the words when he's been away from the Russian president. Obviously, when he was with Lavrov and Putin, he was very soft. It didn't feel at times like he directly criticized Putin at times, Charlie. It feels like he was always trying to tread careful. Was this visit necessary? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe he's trying to be a peacekeeper. I probably wouldn't have visited Russia if I was me. I would probably have visited Russia if anything. Ukraine if anything, Charlie. But it's a difficult one for the UN General Secretary because it looks like he's on the ropes to support another side otherwise. So I know diplomacy. I get the diplomacy could be needed in some instances, but it's difficult at the moment to think of this kind of diplomacy that could be used, Charlie, when you've got a country that's committed war crimes and it's just giving help to another country for no other reason. So, yeah.
Here's some of the live feed we've got at the moment from Ukraine. It says on here, Russian troops are gradually increasing the intensity of their offensive in the eastern Ukraine, says the Ukraine's defense ministry. A spokesman said there's also signs Russian military is preparing for an even bigger action in the Donbass region. 20 civilians have been able to leave the besieged Avastol steel plant in Mariupol, Ukrainian fighters have confirmed. That's humanitarian corridors. Earlier, Ukraine said it's repulsed further Russian attempts to advance despite heavy shelling in the area. And police said they found 3 bodies with their hands tied in their backs in a pit near Bucha near Kiev. That was obviously where Russia have been condemned for their innocuous war crime, should I say, in that area. Horrendous. And the Ukrainian ministers accused Russia of stealing several 100,000 tons of grain from territory which forces apply. So yeah, and we've also got other news on here as well, which Zach will take you through now.
Yeah, so let's go through some of them today at the moment as well. This is one of the above here is a video of what looks like missiles out of a suburban living room, Charlie. This is out of Mykolaiv, 20 miles out of it as well. And obviously they wanted to destroy buildings that the Russians have targeted. You can clearly see some of the bombs that and disposals that have made their way into these buildings, Charlie, whilst they exploded as well. Is pretty, it proves the extent of what weapons the Russians are using as well. As well, Charlie. So yeah, it's they've been following the bomb disposal unit all day, and you can see of them clearing bombs that have been leftover bombs that have been found in the Russian homes or everything like that. Let's go for a bit more here, Charlie. This is what some of the developments today. Russia Foreign Ministry said nuclear war should never be unleashed, and that Russia is clearly following understanding between nuclear wars to prevent it. Well, in some ways, it's kind of telling the truth because the minimum nuclear war probably isn't going to happen, and in that sense as well. Here's another one about the Prime Minister that he is leading a UN effort to evacuate Mariupol, which is just about standing alive at the moment, Charlie. Would you believe it or not? It's actually incredible how that's the Russians are still not taking that over yet. It's unbelievable. But there are people that are trapped inside that really do need saving, Charlie, because they are the last line of defense at the moment between a takeover of Mariupol to the Russians and everything like that. This is a lovely story about the Ukrainian woman being reunited with his mum. As well, that's incredible. As well, there was a protest, I believe, outside a placard in a home, and then someone obviously brought to attention, and we just seen the results. 38 days they went out, and wow, goodness me, those 38 days went by and by and by, but the Home Office did act at the end of the day, Charlie. It was good to see. It was Tanya has been reunited, as well. There's some of the pictures of them in Kharkiv, in Dorbe, Donetsk as well. Honestly, Charlie, they're very heartbreaking images, as well. It's so heartbreaking to see the pictures as well.
Yeah, it is not. It's not the best. I mean, even Angelina Jolie, a very famous actor, playing, of course, Lara Croft in Tomb Raider, she actually visited Ukraine as well, in support. It was actually Lviv. I mean, it was quite a huge visit for her. Odessa airport also got hit by a missile attack the other day as well. It's clear to me Vladimir Putin is continuing a pretty horrendous invasion in Ukraine. I mean, look, let's be honest with you. You're going to get sentenced in 15 years in prison if you're in Russia for telling the truth about this war. I mean, it's proper dictatorship over there. Quite simply, I would rather watch a film starring Sacha Baron Cohen as a dictator than watch Vladimir Putin invade Ukraine. I mean, honestly, though, it is horrible. I mean, this man should not be in power. In fact, I would even go as far as to say this man should be in prison for what he's doing. He's committing so many war crimes, and I'm sickened by some of these images. Please comment down below, guys, what you make of the current situation in Ukraine. More on that later in the show when we hopefully have a look at the papers. Moving on now to the second part of the agenda this week. The launch of Talk TV happened on Monday, with the launch of Piers Morgan Uncensored on Monday at 8 o'clock, with a Donald Trump interview that aired that week as well. More on that in a minute. And also Tom Newton Dunn opening the station up with a news desk. Now, Zach, obviously, what did you make to Talk TV? Do you think Talk TV, in your opinion, is better than GB News?
Well, in terms of presentation wise and content wise, yes, I actually agree, Charlie. Presentation wise, the only hitch up that I saw from launch was it was Tom Newton's Dunn's voice being out of sync for about a minute or so, Charlie. But apart from that, it was a very good launch, wasn't it? I mean, the launch of a very serious, straightforward news show with experienced journalists and Tom Newton Dunn. I thought it was a very good show, but it was very well produced. It was very informative, very interesting as well for the whole hour. And then you had the interview. It feels like watching Special Report on Fox, Charlie. I mean, because that's a straightforward news show and everything like that as well. So it is Fox News in some ways, because it's News Talk TV is owned by News UK, and who owns News UK? Rupert Murdoch, obviously. Rupert Murdoch has some shares in that, so he has obviously some influence on the program direction, Charlie, as well. And there was obviously Piers Morgan Uncensored as well, Charlie, launching here in the UK, in Australia, in America on Fox Nation and Sky News Australia in Australia as well. They hit their focus. They built up quite well. Was with the Donald Trump interview that Piers Morgan had. It was very tetchy at sometimes. It was less tetchy than the trailer made it out to be, but it was still very tetchy towards the end, Charlie, no doubt about it. Piers Morgan, obviously, Donald Trump launching two statements before the interview aired, calling Piers Morgan part of the fake news media. I mean, who doesn't these days, to be fair, Charlie? As well, but 64 million global views is what News UK is saying, Charlie, in terms of the content that's being viewed. Obviously, they're going in mainly a focus on online viewing as well, I see as well. But it did beat GB News and Sky and BBC combined on Monday, although the views have started to drop throughout the week. Probably not surprising in some ways because as well. But it's been an interesting show, Charlie. It's a very interesting show. And then obviously after 8 o'clock at 9, there was the talk, which was basically the equivalent, Charlie, to the 5. If we watch America news and you see the 5 on America on Fox News. The talk was pretty much similar to that. As you had Sharon Osbourne, who sadly had to go home at the end of the week because he's Ozzy Osbourne tested positive. His husband unfortunately tested positive. Had to go back to America.
COVID-19, yeah,
COVID-19. We wish her well and wish her family well. But I like the talk, probably because it wasn't childish. There was no shouting over each other. It wasn't idiotic. It wasn't you're cranking this and that. I felt it was very mature, Charlie, watching the talk. It felt really mature. It didn't feel like a crank channel or anything like that. It felt nice. It actually felt like there was proper debate going on at times, Charlie, no doubt about it. So it was there was certainly a lot of mature debates, and it was interesting nevertheless, Charlie. So yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up. I don't necessarily agree with all the content out of it, but the launch professionally, it felt very good. No, I think it was very good, Charlie. I certainly more like to watch this more than say GB News, Charlie, as well. So yeah, I think for this, I think I'll certainly change channel a little bit more, to be fair, Charlie, because it felt very professional to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's some shows on there, Zach, you probably won't agree with me. I mean, you obviously got like Julia Hartley-Brewer, Mike Graham, some of the more right-wing journalists, I suppose, some of them people. You've also got James Well, who is an anti-Brexit person. Let's be honest with you, he never voted Leave. But yeah, Tom Newton Dunn, formerly of the Eye. I mean, there's some interesting balance of right and left wing on here. I mean, it surely does, I feel like, cancel LBC, kind of, because this station is both kind of a right and left leaning station at the same time. But it's nice to see. I mean, I was surprised by the launch of the station. I personally found GB News better, but this station is also very good as well. Piers Morgan's show, though, I think he's done well. Definitely Harry and Meghan. He is going on about that again. The saga of that. He then had Caitlyn Jenner on one day. Then he had also Tyson Fury on during the week as well. Piers Morgan is certainly providing some interest, and obviously the Trump interview now. Now, Zach, what did you make to Piers' interview with Trump? Because there was a lot of takeaways from that.
There's certainly takeaways as well, Charlie. He's still guessing us to whether he'll run again in 2024. Personally, I think he will do. I think, Charlie, he'll definitely run again in 2024. But if you're going to give a hedge to bed on me, as well, he's obviously dislikes Harry and Meghan. He thinks Boris Johnson's too green, and too liberal in some ways. Oh, I wouldn't call him a liberal in that sense, Charlie.
I'd have to agree with him on that. Yeah.
But he obviously talks about the election. That's where things got a bit tense. Morgan, as well. It's mostly the same old from him as well. He's obviously talked about Disney, obviously because of the situation around Disney as well. So yeah, it feels like a bit of the same old. He talked about I don't know if he mentioned the Twitter stuff as well, because obviously Elon Musk is now taking that over soon, depending on the shareholders' approval. But yeah, it was certainly a wide-ranging interview, Charlie.
Yeah, and you can watch that on YouTube as well. I have to say, I thought the interview was actually done really well. It was, if you ask me, it was a lot better than Chris Wallace's interview. I watched Chris Wallace's one. I didn't really like it. There was a lot of interrupting. Chris Wallace is a much better journalist than what I think he is. He's able to hold politicians to account. But Trump, the interview was toxic for me to watch on Fox News in 2020. I clearly think Chris Wallace had enough on that station. But Piers Morgan's one was done a little bit challenging, but he made it fair. And I mean, those two used to be big friends, obviously. You got The Apprentice USA. So, yeah, those two have been around for each other. Are they still friends? That's the question. They might not agree on the same things, but Trump did go on the show and get his first interview, say, off. Obviously, he had an interview with Farage, but yeah, his first interview off the new stations. We got also Boris Johnson's up making an appearance on Tom Newton-Dunn's show during the week as well.
Yeah, he certainly did. And it was on Tuesday, he made an appearance on Tom Newton-Dunn's The News Desk, as well. He's asked various things, including one of the things as well, Charlie, was the work from home stuff, where he was complaining about whether civil servants should be coming back to the office and everything like that. And I was thinking, yeah, he's very old school Boris Johnson in that sort of sense, because he's obviously not really up to the modern standard really of how things are and how the workplace is done as well. So yeah, it was interesting. Apparently, he rumored to call Tobias Elwood a C word, which I will not repeat. Obviously, it's a bit rude, and to be fair, as well. But yeah, it wasn't that pleasant, really, to be fair. There was also rumours that he said he would privatise the hell out of the passport office. That'd be something, Charlie. I don't think that'd go down very well, to be fair. As well, he refuted, obviously dodged questions on Partygate.
Yeah, more on that later.
More on that later, because there's a campaign going on, which you'll find out later on. It'll probably come up in the front pages today. My guess, it will come up for the third day running. I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about, Charlie. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, it was again a wide-ranging interview. Obviously, talk about Ukraine, Russia, the post office, the Tobias Elwood thing, as well, and the culture, and also I have to say, for a week that called themselves the Party of Law and Order, there was certainly not a lot of good order going around the Conservative Party this week, Charlie. No doubts about it.
Oh, of pornography, yes. I think that MP got suspended, I think, today at the Whitney.
And he's leaving Parliament. He's also resigned as an MP. Neil Parish, his name is, Charlie, was caught watching twice, watching the Tiddlywids on the internet. Why would you do that, Charlie, when you've got female colleagues next to you? That's just so inappropriate and so deranged that you would have a wife and everything like that, and you sit next to female colleagues, and all you do is watching people making love to each other online, and it's not appropriate. It's just pervy. It really is. And I wouldn't want to do that in front of the workplace, Charlie, in a profession. You're an MP, for God's sake. You've been paid this much money to do your job, Charlie, not to watch people making out on and having a bit of fun time with each other. It's not. I
wonder.
Yeah, that's awful.
I wonder what that would be. But yeah, I mean, Zach, before we move on to do the next part of the show, what did you make of Boris's interview on Talk TV?
Yeah, it was interesting, Charlie. I mean, it didn't reveal anything exciting, to be fair, as I said. As well, I think, it's surprising that he's obviously not really surprising that he's dodged some of the questions. There was nothing really headline worthy out of that, Charlie, apart from not ruling out privatising the passport office and nagging civil servants to come back to the office. It's nothing really newsworthy out of that, I don't think.
I think the interview though was done well. Like there wasn't any interruptions. It was all done like in a very good, maybe a couple, but it was done like in a good way. I think the station have got really good interviewers. I think they're very good at, better than the BBC and Sky. They're very good at challenging the politicians, and I think that's a good thing. Even if you have a station that holds MPs to account, that's fine. I can do that. So yeah, that's fine. So that is the news agenda. More on that later on. Now it's time for the sport briefing. Formula E taking place today in Monaco. Goodness me, we're talking a year later in Monaco. We saw last year Antonio Felix da Costa win in a wild race. Today we saw the return of Stoffel van Dorn to the top step of the podium and Mercedes. And Zach, this race had plenty of action towards the end with a late safety car as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't see the race today, unfortunately, Charlie, because I obviously, as you know, I just texted you earlier, I had my mate round today. So I couldn't necessarily see the race, unfortunately. So I'm having to rely on the results here. There was a few crashes from what I've seen, and what happened or anything like that. So let me go through the results. So Sam Bird, I see Pascal Wehrlein, Oliver Rowland, Andrea Lotter, Eduardo Mortara, all had some sort of crashing out, Charlie, unfortunately, and they were caught up in incidences today. Both Tag Heuer Porsches out of the race, Charlie. Not a good week for them overall. But the winner of the race, Charlie, was Stoffel van Dorn. It was a much-needed win again for Mercedes. No doubt about it. It was certainly a lot of drama throughout those last few laps, Charlie. Started fourth, managed to pass the likes of John Eric Verne, and many other drivers as well, Charlie. Mitch Evans as well. Got the pole, but finished in second place. So, yeah, John Eric Verne on the podium again. He finished third. Started where he finished, really, to be fair, Charlie, as well. Good race for Robin Freitz and Antonio Felix da Costa coming through the field. Robert Freitz started fourth. Started seventh, finished fourth. Da Costa 10th and finished fifth. As well, and Lucas Di Grassi falling position. Nick Cassidy, that's another one. Oh my goodness, Charlie. And Sebastian Buemi, they are another lot, Charlie. And Jake Dennis for that effect, Charlie. Another one that should be really happy with their results today. Started at the back. Cassidy was 18th. Buemi was 22nd. Jake Dennis was 15th. And they finished in the top 10, Charlie. So very impressive results overall for those drivers, Charlie. Incredible races for them as well. Alexander Sims, good recovery, just missed out on the points, finished 11th. As well, Dan Tickton was 12th. Sergio Cesar Cameras 13th. Oliver Turvey 14th. Oliver Askew 15th. Antonio Giovinazzi 16th. Max Gunt is 17th. And as I said, Mortara, Lotter, Rowland, Wehrlein, and Sam Bird all got involved in incidents that forced them out of the race, Charlie, and didn't make the finish.
I'm surprised Lotterer retired because he was running really high up. I'm surprised Lotterer actually went out. He must have had a collision with someone. I forgot about that. I thought because when I read up the race, he was doing well. Pascal Wehrlein though had a car issue with his Porsche mechanical. Yeah. Sam Bird pitted. Oliver Rowland pitted. Mortara pitted. Andre Lotterer, shocker. I did not expect him to retire, and he must have had contact with someone. Probably why he ended up down in a DNF position as well. But yeah, drivers that Nick De Vries having another difficult weekend in 10th. His championship defence is not going well at all at the moment. As well, Sebastian Buemi 8th, great recovery from him. I really hope he shows more pace this season. Jake Dennis, a good result coming from 15th. Good battle with Oliver Askew. And another one, Nick Cassidy. Wow, 18th to 7th. Great drive from him. Probably my driver of the day today, Nick Cassidy, putting off some great moves. But yeah, Stoffel Van Dorn winning the race. As for the championship, well, let's go over now and have a look at the Drivers' Championship. Stoffel Van Dorn leads the standings now as well. And we have it up. Van Dorn leads by 6 points from Jean-Eric Verne, who's in second, and a further 3 behind Mitch Evans in third. The top 4 separated by 10 points. Robin Friends drops to 4th in the standings. As well, you can see the trends there as well in all the finishes. Da Costa 10th in the championship there with all of that results there. Nick de Vries down in 8th. Oh, he needs a miracle because he hasn't scored in round 4 or 5. He did get a win in round 6, but he needs to improve. But yeah, that's all I can say on the Formula E standings. In terms of the Constructors' Championship or the Teams' Championship, we're going to go over that now for you. Mercedes still lead that 15 points clear of DS Techeetah. The next race for Formula E, we are going to get that up for you now, is Berlin, 14th to the 15th of May.
And it's a double round as well, Charlie. It's Berlin's normally been the season finale for a few years. Not now, obviously, but it's now round 7 and 8. It's a double round as well, Charlie. So there's 2 races up for grabs as well. So there's twice the opportunities. Berlin's obviously cost that a little airport track as well, Charlie. As well, I like the airport track. I have to say, it's a very interesting track to race on as well. But yes, it's a race that I'm certainly looking forward to, Charlie, no doubt about it. And that is about in 2 weeks' time, I think it is, Charlie, 2 weeks' time as well. So that will be the Berlin E-Prix as well in 2 weeks' time. 2 races as well.
Yep, 2 weeks' time, 14th to 15th of May, Berlin E-Prix, a big event. Obviously, usually the season finale, but yeah, moving to mid-season for Formula E this year. I cannot wait for it. It's going to be pretty cool indeed. Moving on now to the next sport, Formula One now gets a mention because this weekend, unfortunately, is Black Weekend in motor racing. Obviously, we lost Roland Ratzenberger 28 years ago today, crashing out in qualifying. And obviously, Ayrton Senna tomorrow, it will be 28 years ago since we lost him after a horrifying accident during the San Marino Grand Prix in 1994. Obviously, 1 week to go till Miami as well. Now, Zach, what did you make of that race at Imola last week for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix?
Charles Leclerc is a bottle job, number 1. He could have easily finished the top 3, but completely misjudged the corners, Charlie. No doubt about it. So he blew that away. Max Verstappen was obviously the winner of that race. That he would easily won that race. I mean, he managed to get through the sprint race as well, Charlie. As we know, we saw that as well. He managed to overtake Leclerc on the sprint, and therefore he won that race. But yeah, it was in a victory for Verstappen. He led most of the race anyway. As well, he had the pace to do it, and he won the race. And disappointing race for Ferrari in front of their home crowd out of all the races they could blow it at. Sainz for the second race in a row having an incident, retiring, barely making it through the first lap for the second race in the row, Charlie, thanks to a collision with Dan Ricciardo with no investigation necessary on that as well. Lando Norris as well, 1-2 for Red Bull. Lando Norris third, great result for him. McLaren back in it, Charlie. George Russell had a better result in 4th as well. He's obviously the best Mercedes going, which is pretty surprising, to be fair, Charlie, if you think about it. Bottas is doing a great job in 5th. Leclerc has managed to finish in 6th at the end of the day. Overall, I think, was it Snowder's 7th position? Yeah. Great job as well. Yeah, Charlie. Great job overall for Tsunoda. Vettel, I think Vettel did a good job as well. I think
Aston Martin got their first points of the year.
Is pretty well. deserved points as well for Vettel. Magnussen Knight continued to score points for Haas. Alliance Stroll also finished in the top 10 as well. Well done. Alex Albon just missing out in 11th position. Dismal weekend in 13th. Esteban Ocon had a 5-second time penalty for impeding Hamilton in the pits. So he finished 14th. Guan Yu Zhou 15th. Latifi 16th. Mick Schumacher 17th. Daniel Ricciardo was 18th. Alonso had a retirement. And Carlos Sainz as well also went out in the first lap. As well, Charlie.
Yeah.
So that's the results there.
Yeah. The results in that order, I mean, to be honest, if you want to watch the highlights last weekend, yeah. Lewis Hamilton, Lewis Hamilton, I think, according to Nico Rosberg, took 20 laps or more to overtake Pierre Gasly. He said into turn 1, did Nico Rosberg. And that's Hamilton trying for about the 20th time to get past to go by Gasly.
Oh, yeah,
and Gasly clearly held on to what was 12th place. Lewis Hamilton, they're having a dismal weekend in the Mercedes. God, they're struggling like crazy this year, especially with a porpoising. You got to see that on the straights. It's horrendous.
It's dreadful. Honestly, it's bouncing up and down like nothing else I've seen. It's been dreadful, the porpoising. As well.
It is, and we go to Miami next week. We can't wait for that race.
New Grand Prix, new circuit. It'll be a very luxurious atmosphere, Charlie. It'll be very VIP, very expensive. So it's going to be quite a beauty of a race to watch out for, Charlie. It's going to be quite the opening race there. We'll see how the racing pans out. Yeah.
So that is next weekend, the Miami Grand Prix. More information will be on Sky Sports F1. Now it's time for a quick little update on NASCAR now. This weekend, I will get up for you now where we are heading.
Dover.
In the Cup Series, which is at Dover. Chris Buescher on pole position for the current race there. I'm just going to get that up for you right now. The leaderboard, that was qualifying, by the way, that's done. Cup Series, Chris Buescher on pole. Denny Hamlin second. Carl Larson third. Chase Elliott fourth in the number 9 Chevrolet Camaro, Hendrick Motorsports. Ryan Blaney fifth. Alex Bowman sixth. Ross Chastain seventh. Daniel Suarez eighth. Bubba Wallace ninth. And I believe that is Kyle Busch 10th. But last week's race, the Geico 500 in the Cup Series won on, I think, the last lap again by Ross Chastain.
Ross Chastain, great job by him getting that victory. Ross Chastain's having a good season. And he's generally a good driver overall, Charlie. Great running. He's won the race. Austin Dillon just finishing behind in second. And there's Kyle Busch as well in third. Kyle Larson for Truex in fifth. Eric Jones sixth. Chase Elliott seventh. McDowell eighth. Alex Bowman ninth. Harvick in 10th. So that was the top 10 there. And Blaney as well in 11th. Bubba Wallace, I believe, was crashed out in the final lap, I believe.
Yeah.
No, did he crash out in the final lap? He did crash out in the final lap, didn't he? As well, there was a crash in the final lap, which forced a few drivers into the wall and ruined a few races as well, the results as well. But there's the positions, as you said, as well, for the starting grid for the race at Dover. It will be Buescher on pole, Hamlin alongside him. Larson third, Elliott fourth, Blaney fifth, Bowman sixth, Ross Chastain last week finished seventh. Daniel Suarez 8th, Bubba Wallace 9th, and Kyle Busch in 10th position. That would be the top 10, Charlie. As well, this is normally, I would say, a Hendrick more like circuit, Charlie. So we'll be interested in how well Hendrick do as well. Chase Elliott has, I think, a good shot possibility of winning the race if he does well. It's Hendrick's circuit, Charlie. I can see him doing well.
Yeah, Elliott needs a win this season. He's not had a win so far. I'll be interested to see how he gets on as well. But we have also got some final results here from the Xfinity race, which took place at Dover. Josh Berry winning that race there in the number 8 Chevrolet with... hold on. There we go. Josh Berry winning that race.
Charlie. Oh, yeah, it actually is final. It is final by the looks of it. Apologies. It says running on there. It may well be that the race could have ended by now. I don't know. But it looks like Josh Berry is currently winning. And if the results are going to remain like this, then Argo will be second. Gibbs will be in third. Noah Gragson will be fourth, and Sam May will be in fifth. So it says running at the moment, Charlie. So it may well be the race is still running as we speak. I don't think it is though, because Oh yeah, that's the results. It looks like that's the final results, Charlie, because it says final up there. So no, Jake Barrett was the winner of that race, Charlie. I see. My apologies. I didn't see the final bit on the Google thing. But yeah, so he won the race. Olga was second. Ty Gibbs was first. Noah Gregg was fourth. Sam Mayer was sixth. AJ Jr. was sixth. Brandon Jones seventh. Sam Creed was eighth. Reese Herbis ninth. And Ryan Siege in 10th. Yeah, so that's the top 10, Charlie, overall.
Yeah, that was a top 10, and they go next week to hold on, if I can get them. I think I've lost the oh, here we go.
They go to Darlington next week, Charlie, next race as well. The Xfinity Series, I believe, is going to Darlington. I think are they all going to Darlington next week? I'm just going to check.
Yeah, they are next weekend.
All Trucks, Xfinity, and Cut are all going to Darlington next week, Charlie. So it will be all 3 series on display there next week.
Yeah. And that's in May. So good luck to all the NASCAR teams there heading to Darlington. Now, Charlie's good news. Well, a little bit of good news today. Obviously, local elections next week. Big week for the local elections. I'm actually going to talk today on my good news segment about local elections because next week it's polling day. 6th of May, time to get out to the polls and pick who you want to be the next council leader. It's going to be interesting to see which people are running. I think Basildon, we've got some council elections coming up. We have plenty of local elections coming up week, Zach, particularly in some huge areas as well.
Yes, one area to look out for, Mummy. In Charlie is certainly in London, Charlie. That's where all the big elections I think to look out for. As well, Wandsworth, as well, Barnet, as well, Charlie, to look out for. As well, Charlie, no doubt about it. Bury, Westminster, as well, Harvant, as well, Harlow is one to watch out for as well, Charlie, to see what happens there. There's also elections in Scotland, Charlie, local elections in Scotland as well, council elections there. The one I think that's not been reported enough, Charlie, as well, I think as well, is Northern Ireland, Charlie. There are massive legislative elections happening there, Charlie, that will determine who takes charge of Northern Ireland and controls the assembly there. For the first time in many years, Charlie, we could have a Sinn Féin leadership in Northern Ireland. A big shock could happen there, where Sinn Féin could be in charge of Northern Ireland for the first time in many years. They are 6 points ahead currently, ahead of the DUP in the polls at the moment, Charlie. I don't doubt Northern Ireland, the cost of living, the border poll, the protocol, it's all big issues there at the moment, Charlie. Well, Northern Ireland legislators, I think, the ones I'm looking forward to the most, because they're important to see what happens in Ireland as well, potentially the future of Ireland within the union as well is massive, could be massive as well, Charlie. So works out for, but plenty of local elections in England where Labour must feel like they're doing well, but maybe not well enough to take over some things. There are certainly some areas that are very likely to take over, Charlie. There's some that they just may miss out on. But at the moment, they look like they're going to do a net gain of seats in London at the moment. In the red wall areas, Charlie, it'll be very interesting to see whether the 2019 effect is still there with the Tories and everything like that, whether they will retain some of their key red wall seats or whether they'll gain some of it, even, Charlie. They could do better in the north than, say, the south, Charlie. No, I think in as well. So, yeah, there's certainly a lot of local elections, Charlie, to keep up and look out for. There's so much. It's going to be very interesting, Charlie. And there's going to be local matters, major national matters that will influence voters, Charlie, as well. So there will be. So we're looking out for 6,000 councillors in England to be elected, Charlie, as well. And I'll probably bring you the best of it next week as well, if I can get on next week. Hopefully, provide F1 pending. As well, I'll let you know about that, Charlie. But yeah. I think there's a lot to look out for. I'm certainly next Thursday and into Friday is going to be big polling days in the UK as councils decide their elections. and potentially Boris Johnson's future as well. This needs to be a good election as well. This needs to be a good election, for a stable election for Conservatives, if they feel happy keeping Boris Johnson, because it's potentially, if they lose enough seats, Charlie, plenty may send another letter of no confidence. National issues do matter in these local elections, Charlie. Local issues do matter, but we will see. No doubt about it, Charlie. We'll see.
Or Keir Starmer. Let's have a see what happens with Beergate coming up in a minute. So we'll get into that as well. Moving on now, just before we do the papers, I thought I'd share with you some actual positive news today, because if you have seen in Essex, a new canine dip and dive pool for dogs has actually opened. Would you believe this? A new dog pool has been hailed a success by its owners and their furry friends alike. Canine Dip and Dive hosts fun swimming sessions for dogs in a large outdoor pool near Gardener's Farm near Malden. After opening earlier this month, it runs pool parties, dog diving, puppy paddle, senior and solo swims. Owners can even jump into with their dogs. Terry and Jodie Bruce run the Malden pool, and clients say the duo are loved by their dogs. Jodie said, "It's amazing. We fully booked it every day, and the feedback is overwhelming. So far, our customers love it. We feel so lucky to have this opportunity, and we look forward to trying this in the summer." Andrew Brownlee, who started the canine dip and dive in Suffolk, said the response in the pool opening has been tremendous. Each weekend is fully booked, and they've good booking levels during the week. There have been lots of 5-star reviews and feedback from visitors. Amazing. Sessions range from £15 to £35, and people can book their dog in online at, and I quote this now, bit.ly3w912am. That is bit.ly/3w912 capital A lowercase n. That is the link. You can go on there as well. Canine Dip and Dive notes its pools are not hydrotherapy pools. They are made for dogs to have a swim and have fun in and exercise. Please note, it's not a hydro spa, if you're asking me. That's the Manor House Hotel in Devon as well. So that is your good news segment this week. All again next week. Moving on now to the papers. Well, should I say the papers? We have lots of newspapers probably coming out now. In fact, probably some of tomorrow's papers are right on our doorstep.
We chose a good timing, haven't we, Charlie?
Yep, it is a good time as well. Let's get on with the national newspaper headlines, because we have got some big papers to talk about. Beergate probably on there. Ukraine, the war in Ukraine probably on there. Let's have a look what the headlines are today. Let's have a look. And we haven't got the right link, unfortunately. Again, we'll get that up for you now. The BBC, for some reason, does not have the right link of papers, so we're having to go on Sky News and get some of their papers up, which we do have for you right now. Here we go, guys. It doesn't seem like we have actually got some papers up, so do apologise, guys. We are having some.
It says Sundays on there. I think it didn't say Sundays or.
Oh yeah, I think tomorrow's papers have come out for some reason, so we are literally today, trying to get.
Yeah, there you go. Tomorrow's papers today. If you go onto that one, because they got some papers on there, Charlie.
There we go. Do apologise, guys. We are having some slight issues getting the papers up. Here we go, guys. Oh, here we go. Better. Some Sunday's papers we'll go over in a minute. So we're going to go for the papers for the 30th of April. These are all papers for today. Actually, here we go. Right, the Daily Star goes for the headline, "Thou shall not be mean to the mother of law. Shock decree from the Pope himself." The Daily Express goes for what Britain really cares about, and surprise, it's not Partygate. Daily Mail reports that cabinet ministers are calling for a new inquiry into the Beergate scandal involving Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner. Does anyone remember the Mail headline with Starmer the COVID party hypocrite on the front? Trust me, that was an interesting headline there. The Guardian goes for Tory MP Neil Parish faces an inquiry over porn claims. The Independent goes for also with Boris Becker jailed for bankruptcy fraud. The Daily Telegraph also goes with the porn MP refuses to quit as loses the whip. The Daily Mirror goes for Boris Becker being sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. The Times goes for a headline: a senior Conservative MP has been urged to step down to protect the party from sleaze. And the Eye goes for Westminster victims too scared to report MPs. The FT, the Financial Times, goes with HSBC is facing increasing pressure to break up after its largest shareholder, Chinese insurer Ping An, urged the bank to separate its Asian and Western businesses. What do you make to the latest newspaper headlines?
Yeah, so an interesting set of headlines, Charlie. A bit of range ones, and some of them just not necessary. Let's go to the Daily Star one. Let's go for the comic headline of the day. They are talking about the Pope for whatever reason, Charlie. They go for those shall not be mean to the mother-in-law. So Pope, basically what the Pope Daily Star is implying, that Pope Francis's mother-in-laws are not devils. It depends what mothers that you're talking about, because there are some motherly devils out there as well, Charlie. So mothers you are talking about, unfortunately, in that instance. The Daily Express, they have a poll, Charlie. Not really. I mean, they call it a surprising poll, but it's not really that surprising in some ways, that they found that the cost of living is the biggest concern for hard-pressed Britain, not the Partygate scandal. Not surprising, because I don't think Partygate was the first on the list anyway, Charlie, at this stage. They obviously do care about it quite a bit, but obviously not enough as well. Cost of living is very serious these days, Charlie. It still is very serious as well, no doubt about it. Now, this is the one I'm really annoyed about. The next one, I'm sorry, I am really annoyed about. This is the second day running they run this headline. The Daily Mail reports that cabinet ministers are calling for a new inquiry into what they call Beergate. It involves Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner in Durham last year, at the end of April 2021, having a beer in a Durham constituency whilst having drinks and working on local election campaign, Charlie. It's a pathetic smear campaign. I know. If you think about it, I know the Daily Mail are probably in campaign mode and trying to smear Labour as possible as well. But it's all started when Richard Holden sent a letter to the Durham constable asking for a reinvestigation into the Sir Keir's and Angela Rayner's drinks in April. Now, the police originally said there was no investigation necessary, and that remains the position today, Charlie. Yet there's a bunch of cabinet ministers who apparently say that we all want to move on for Partygate, but somehow have to drag Labour into can't move on from Labour Beergate for whatever reason. It's not even a Beergate, Charlie. It's nothing. It's a nothing gate in this instance. They are all now trying to not move on and instead try to get on the case of Angela Rayner and Keir Starmer. I mean, if you think about it, Angela Rayner has received enough misogyny as it is this week, so she doesn't really got enough on her plate. But it's ridiculous, Charlie. This sort of headlines. There's no new developments, Charlie. There's no new investigation taking place, despite what client journalists like Tom Harwood think or imply when there really isn't. It's a client journalist, not a proper journalist. So yeah, this is a stupid, ridiculous, grip at the nails campaign by the Mail to somehow think that the Labour Beergate is a big deal, really, when it really isn't, Charlie. So I'm going to move on to that before I keep ranting on about it for the rest of the night. The Guardian goes with the this is slightly old now because there's newer news today actually on this. And the Guardian went with the news on the Neil Parish is watching porn in the House of Commons headline. Now he has now resigned. He's now going to resign as an MP. Twice. This is updated. So he had a whip removal yesterday. He's now going to resign as an MP. And there's going to be a by-election in his constituency, Charlie. I think if we look at the geographics of that constituency, you think it'd be a good one for Lib Dems to take a seat on, potentially as well, but we'll see about that. And the Independent goes for the Boris Becker headline as well. I know they've gone for the Tory MP porno scandal, but they've gone for Boris Becker as well, Charlie, because he's been sentenced to 2.5 years in jail as well for not declaring properly his bankruptcy and actually lying about it, Charlie, when he had other assets as well that was hiding away. It was a very shocking, very silly thing of Boris Becker to do, unfortunately, as well. So that's what the Telegraph leaves with Porngate, Daily Mail leaves with Boris Becker, and it's quite a silly story for him to end up doing, unfortunately, Charlie. Very silly for Boris Becker. It was unnecessary and silly of him to lie, unfortunately, about his assets and everything like that. As well, the Times is going the same thing about the Tory MP resigning as well, pretty much, and the fall of the champion about the Boris Becker lying about his assets, and also as well on the weekend, the Westminster victims too scared to report to MPs' actions. Now, last Sunday, Charlie, the Sunday Times had a report basically saying that there's been a range of 56 MPs under investigation for sexual assault or investigation about sexual misconduct overall, Charlie, which is a shocking amount in Parliament, you have to say. And now there's also the victims that they feel like the system is not doing enough for them to support them at the moment, Charlie. So yeah, there's a lot of upset in the
Wasn't something said about Angela Rayner during the week?
Yes, Charlie. There was a comparison. There was a shocking comparison in the Mail on Sunday where one Tory MP compared Angela Rayner crisscrossing her legs at Prime Minister's questions to something out of Basic Instinct, where Sharon Stone wears a dress, no knickers on. Unfortunately, I don't want to go too much into detail about what that implies. It was very sexist and crass remarks by the Tory MP in question. We don't know who it was, Charlie, but it was a very misogynistic and sexist headline. I don't know why they even published, Charlie. It was disgraceful reporting overall from the Mail on Sunday. And the Financial Times going for something a little bit different, because they're going with the fact that HSBC is facing pressure to break up with its largest shareholder, which is, by the way, a Chinese shareholder, after it urged its bank to separate its Asian and Western businesses. Now, that is a bit of a surprise, Charlie. Or obviously, they want more Chinese control by the looks of it. The way, Charlie, as well. There's some front pages out tomorrow as well, Charlie. It's that time of night as well. And let's go through some of them as well. In that instance, the Sunday Times goes for the headline of Hoyle leading a new committee, Charlie, on a new Speakers Committee as well on issue updating the practices, Charlie, of the House of Commons as well. They also gone with the MP. Who blamed detractors for the reason why he was watching the idiotic porn videos, Charlie. It was as well. The Sunday People goes with this very interesting and rather heartbreaking story. Interesting story. Tweet to keep my James Killer in jail. Charlie, I think this is good. Looks like there's a decision by the payroll board coming up on this prisoner as well. Venables is the name is as well. So, and it looks like there's going to be some bus of keeping in prison, because the payroll board's going to decide that. And that's the Sunday People. And the Mirror goes for, I had monsters Belfield's secret son. This is going on. A woman claims Levy Belfield fathered a sixth son's week before Millie Dowler. So basically the same front page as the Sunday People in some ways. It's a very dark storyline, Charlie, in that instance.
Here is Neil Parish on The Observer.
Neil Parish on The Observer, who's now resigned as well. He claimed it was a moment of madness. It was tractors I was looking at on the internet, he claims. Tractors do make noise, but not the sort of noise that you make when you're watching Humpty Dumpty videos, Charlie. It's just a ridiculous comparison, in my opinion. So there's going to be a by-election over that as well. The Sunday Telegraph, half of our MPs will be women, says Tory after porn scandal. I don't know what's relevant to that one. Oh, it might be the relevance, Charlie, because on the headline here, it's basically Oliver Dowling's been interviewed in the Telegraph by saying that half of the party's candidates at the next election should be women, which for quality, I'll give them on this, quite fair as well, Charlie. The Daily Star on Sunday goes with a new interview with Sue Hodge, aka the LO Star. They've put in a French version of that show, Charlie, on there in France. Very interesting, nevertheless. The Sunday Express goes for Putin's army of sabotagers target Britain, because the Secret Services have issued a red alert warning because they might send sabotagers to the UK, and there's been a red security alert, Charlie, out for this as well. Not obviously, this is not bombs or anything. This is just spies, Charlie, that go around and try to influence people through security risks, Charlie, which is not very good at all. And the Independent is going for Sunak doesn't get cost of living impact on poor. So number 11 criticised, I believe household savings will help solve crisis, which probably isn't true, Charlie, because household savings are there. People are saving on their spending at the moment, which are not going out spending because the cost of living these days, Charlie. So yeah, that's the Sunday papers for tomorrow as well, Charlie.
Yeah, they are the papers, and that is that part of the show done. More papers, all the papers be out. More papers will be on the way tomorrow. As well. Now moving on to the Great British Star and Red Devil. I have my nominations for the Great British Star and Red Devil already up as well. I'm going to go through my stars very quickly. So many stars actually that I've written down in here. So let's go on with the Great British Stars. Elon Musk gets my first nomination for taking over Twitter. Let's hope free speech is back. Jacob Rees-Mogg gets another nomination for a comment he made about saying civil servants should go back to work and stop messing about at home as well. Now another one goes to this person here in should I say Ukraine? A man who is a Samaritan now, and this man is quite iconic, really, because he actually welcomed Ukrainian refugees into a church. Yes. You might know this man here, who's about to come up on my screen, should it load up, which it does. Ukrainian refugees move into a medieval Irish castle owned by Good Samaritan here.
Oh, that's nice.
In question, having no space in Madrid, where he lives in his Spanish wife, Lola Barry Hungin, sorry, pronounced that wrong, decided to quickly open up their second home when the shells started falling in Ukraine. The second home just to be a Bologna castle in County Galway, and Holian pronounced Hoyen, flew to Poland to pick up a group of 11 refugees, some from Mariupol and others from Dnipro. We were emotional. The wrecks were probably more than we weren't sure what we were doing, and we were just trying to make things better, hanging to our refugees. So now every week gets better. You can see the weight coming off the shoulders, and people are trying to. This is amazing. They were welcomed by the people of Ireland, and yeah, this priest or this Good Samaritan here has allowed Ukrainian refugees to move into a castle. That is extremely of this gentleman. It's an amazing achievement. Red Devils of the week for me. Well, it's the Russian powerhouses, Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov getting my nomination, the president and the foreign minister, for lying to the UN Secretary General, who I think gets a star this week for actually going out to these countries of Ukraine and Russia to actually try and sort out a negotiation to end this barbaric war in Ukraine. Keir Starmer gets a nomination for myself for Beergate. We all know what's going to happen with the investigation as well. Just Stop Oil, another nomination for myself for causing havoc at petrol stations this week, trying to clamber on and wreck them. And China get a nomination for zero COVID policy, locking civilians down in their homes for no reason. Zach, what do you make of my nominations for the Great British Start and Red Devil?
I agree with some of the nominations. Obviously, I don't agree with the others that you probably pointed out. That was the church one. Very lovely, Charlie. No doubt about it. As well. Should I get to my one? I've only got one this week. It's my British Star. It's the Ukrainian woman that was reunited with mum, as we saw earlier, Charlie. That was a bit of a last-minute decision for me, but that was really good as well. Just very sweet of the Ukrainian woman to speed up her visa application to see her grandma. Brilliant job for her. She gets the star of the week for me. The Red Devils for me, Charlie, go to Neil Parris, the Tory MP, who's watching very naughty videos in the comments this week, Charlie. I'm also going to give it to the Daily Mail, or shall I say the Daily Fail, Charlie, for their rather unwanted campaign against the Labour leader on this. Since I'm the opposite of you on this one, Charlie, I just think it's ridiculous and just totally unnecessary. It's a bit silly. It's a waste of time. There's nothing new going to be investigated about this. So I know there's an election coming up, Charlie, but it's a bit of a pathetic headline. There's nothing new about it. It's just trying to get the readers motivated, I think, Charlie. So yeah, the Mail and Neil Parris to the Red Devils, and the Ukrainian woman who saw reunited with his mum is star of the week for me.
Yep, and that brings us to the end of the show today. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I hope you've enjoyed the night here on YouTube for the Charlie Tolhurst Show. We'll be back again next weekend for another edition of the Charlie Tolhurst Show, also rounding up local election day. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Take care, and